Ah, yes, high and mighty, the SEC. But how high and how mighty can this Big 12, these 16 teams, make a case at being America's best conference? This is Locked On Big 12.
You are Locked On Big 12, your daily podcast on the Big 12 Conference, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Happy Wednesday, everybody. Welcome into Locked On Big 12. Drake Toll from ESPN Central Texas here, alongside Jeff Fuller from ESPN 960 sports contributor over there. And look, number one, thank you, Jeff, for being here. Two, thank everybody else for making Locked On Big 12 their first listen every single day. And Jeff, you have been at the forefront of not just realignment, but at the forefront specifically of the way that all of college football has shaken out, even from brand standpoints, individual brand standpoints. So I'm sure all my polls and the votes have just driven you insane. And I don't think anybody does analytics better than you when it comes to this kind of stuff. So I had to have you on. It is something that I've really wanted the last couple of weeks. Glad we could do this. And let's just jump on in with the SEC, man. Is there any way this Big 12, it sounds crazy. People are throwing their phones that I'm making this question even a thing. Can the Big 12 throw punches alongside the SEC?
Get in the ring, throw punches, absolutely. Or is it a big, heavy underdog? Sure. Losing, the biggest, the blue bloods from the Big 12 to the SEC, it does hurt. There's no question that all those eyeballs, all those dollars, all those fans going there, you don't want to see that. I know a lot of the irate eight sort of love to see it because they've been sick of, a team that hasn't dominated on the field, sort of dominating social media and sort of running the conference. But yeah, throwing punches. I sort of see the Big 12 as a SEC in the making. SEC, smaller states, didn't start out with the top academic brands in the nation. But boy, fans and people and states who care about football, care about basketball, show up. Some people say, those sad people in the South and Central Plains, they don't have anything better to do than to go to the games. Of course they're going to have better attendance, but fan engagement, you look at, attendance, you look at percent attendance, sort of percent capacity at the football games and the basketball games. The Big 12 is, right up there with the SEC for tops in the nation, above the Big 10, far above the ACC, and way, way above what the Pac-12, may God rest their soul. It's looking like at this point. Yes. And that's, I don't think it's any question as to why the Pac doesn't exist anymore. You can look at the big pictures of them overvaluing themselves. We've all heard about the $50 million that they thought they were worth on the heels of
turned down.
Yeah, exactly. Of the Big Ten's deal. They're like, oh, we're the little sister conference of the Big Ten. We should get close to that. Yeah, they just really overvalued themselves. But when it comes down to it, yes, they're in big cities. Yes, they have some, historic brands, but they just didn't have the fans that cared. And, COVID may have, taken the mask off that, they were hiding behind, little play on words with COVID.
Unintended.
Yes, unintended. But it just showed where their students, where their, administrators, where a lot of their fans, and there are a lot of great fans there. They're just, they're not concentrated enough, and it's not in a populated part of the country relatively to the, the East and the Midwest.
You mentioned, and the ones that are populated, the LA markets are the ones that were leaving the conference first and foremost. And when it comes to the SEC, though, and I do want to compare the Big 12 to the Big 10, I do want to talk more in depth on what killed the Pac-12 or the Pac-12 being its own demise. But SEC-wise, Jeff, you texted me. I'm going to peel the curtains back here, and I'm going to read part of this text. That the SEC and the Big 12 are very similar on a somewhat smaller scale, and that the Big 12 has a lot in common with the SEC. And you already touched on that a little bit, but now that you said little sister, I want to start connecting things. Can the Big 12 be almost that, hey, the piggyback off the SEC as a league that should get more respect in years to come?
Absolutely. So one thing that people sort of bag on the Big 12. The new Big 12 is like, there's no blue bloods, there's no big brand. And that is important, unfortunately. You know, you look at the Big 10 and they're honestly, after, you know, Ohio State, Michigan, and Penn State, there's not a whole lot there. There's lots of great brands. There's lots of great fans. There's big stadiums, but the middle to bottom of the conference is so weak. The Big 12 has a much higher floor than any other conference in the nation. And that's sort of one of the good things about the SEC. There's not, there's Vanderbilt, occasionally Mississippi State or Kentucky used to be weak, or South Carolina, but a lot of those brands they're rising up too. The floor is pretty high in the SEC as well. What the Big 12 needs is some brands to really start cruising. Need to get some national, get to the playoffs more, win some titles. That's where respect is earned. And, that's tough too, because, you look at all these people who say, you don't really win those national titles unless you're in the top 10 in recruiting year after year. And there's some good evidence behind that. So, we'll see. I mean, got to have fan bases that put their money where their mouth is and invest in NIL and raise the recruiting game and earn it on the field. It's a tough climb, but Big 12's got a lot of schools who I think are willing and wanting to make that climb.
Jeff, what I'm hearing here is that the Big 12, the SEC, obviously the gap, the chasm is so large that you're probably not going to make it up, but you at least have the fervor. These teams have mostly the fervor to do so, unlike the Pac-12 that even 5 years ago was just wallowing away. But with the national championship conversation, how many does it take? Is there even a Big 12 team that can win a national? You just saw our best representation get beat 62-7. Is there a Big 12 team that can win a national championship in the next decade? Because I don't know if I see it.
Yeah, I mean, it's easy to sit back and say, well, we haven't seen it, so we won't see it. But when's the last time you saw the Pac-12 team get a national championship? Yeah. Does that mean no one talked about USC or think that they're a college football playoff contender right now? You're not hearing that. So it's, some of these bigger brands from bigger media markets, they get the benefit of the doubt. They do recruit at a higher level. But I mean, TCU just made the championship game. I know they got boat raced. I mean, we all saw that. We might have shed a tear for the Big 12 as a whole and TCU specifically, but just getting there, I mean, that's the first step. And, can other programs make that step, make the playoff, win a game? That's how you start it. You get the ball rolling, you get the recruiting up, you get the right coaching staff, and, it can start rolling. I mean, we've seen it with Midwestern teams, and from smaller markets all the time in the SEC and the old, Big Eight, old Southwest Conference. You got teams who can climb, and you don't have to be from the biggest media markets and get all the preseason pub and praise to do it.
Jeff, you got the big Y there behind you, the BYU gear on. You're rocking today. Do you think, before we get into the Big Ten, oh my gosh, it's all BYU. It's all BYU.
That a stretch Y overload?
I love it. It's just the same logo thrice. With BYU and these new 8, is that the program? Objectively, if you've got to go objective here, is that a program you think could rise to national prominence?
I mean, I really do. There's always the naysayers who say, well, you got the honor code there, and it's a pretty strict honor code. No premarital sex, no alcohol, drugs. A lot of the things that are the sine qua non of the college experience for a lot of people in a lot of colleges. So and I remember seeing a recruiting like desirability of different programs, of all the P5 programs, and they included BYU. And I think it was last or second to last of recruits that would consider BYU. So it's a smaller group. But I mean, BYU now, BYU and Colorado are the last 2 Big 12 teams to win a national title. So it can happen. It has happened. But I mean, honestly, you just gotta, I think if BYU can get the ball rolling, can get recruiting better, can start winning. And, we've always tried to do more with less, has sort of been the BYU way, sort of be the upstart. We've got a bigger fan base now, but didn't start that way.
Yeah.
I think it's in the Big 12's best interest to have some of the brands that the Big 10 and the SEC don't desire to be our best brands. Because, hey, I mean, if let's say if Oklahoma State wins, 2 national titles in the next 5 years, SEC might be interested in them. If Kansas comes up and shocks the world, or a team like Arizona State, who just made AAU status and has a massive alumni base, if enrollment, if they start really rising to the top and making the playoffs, they're going to look pretty desirable to the Big Ten. But then you got schools like BYU, or maybe even TCU and Baylor, religious schools don't really fit into that academic club. BYU, I mean, big brand, big school, great alumni, accomplished a lot, and just couldn't break door that barrier into the P5 club. Frustrating as all get out as a fan to see and to see other, TCU was picked up by the Big 12 before BYU was, and BYU is a much bigger fan base than TCU did. Even Utah at the time, they had recent football success, but weren't nearly the fan base and accomplished as much on the field as BYU had. And to see them picked up by the Pac-12 is just frustrating to watch that. And but the good thing about BYU is we if something wonderful happens and we win a few national championships, again, we're all dreaming here. Does the Big Ten want BYU? Does the SEC want BYU? I think both, fit-wise, cultural fit, and geographically. I don't know if either of those conferences would really want a BYU, even being that successful. So that's why I'm saying Big 12, cheer on BYU. We need to be the big brand. It's because we'll stick around. Nobody else wants us.
I love it. Well, Jeff, I want to take what BYU brings into the Big 12 and what the Big 12 has with a team like BYU moving forward, and then compare it to the Big 10, because I think that race is much tighter right here on Locked On Big 12, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. All right, Jeff's not going anywhere, but I got to tell you that I'm not wearing underwear. That's right. I'm not wearing underwear, and I get it. I know. I think it's gross and it's weird, but it's because I have bird dogs on. I do have pants on, and I would stand up, and it's just like a total crotch shot, so I can't do that. Bird dogs make you look good. They stretch like khaki shorts, but look better than khaki. They give you a sculpted look. Like I look waist up. I don't got much going on, but then my legs. People see my legs now because of the bird dogs. Like, dude, you squat, and I don't. I just don't. I wear bird dogs. They're like Lululemon, but they're better. They use anti-stink sweat material that keeps you cool and dry. You don't smell bad. You look good and you don't smell bad, and you don't have to wear underwear. If you buy one right now, you get a free hat. I love my hat. I wear my hat sometimes, most of the times. I right now, birddogs.com/LockedOnCollege. What else would you do? Or enter promo code LockedOnCollege. Get a free white hat with your order. birddogs.com/LockedOnCollege or LockedOnCollege. Get a free hat when you order your bird dogs right now. birddogs.com/LockedOnCollege. Promo code LockedOnCollege. Do it. Bird dogs. All right, Jeff, the Big 10 and the Big 12. I get it. The Big 12 is third fiddle to everybody. They're smaller than the Big 10. They're smaller than the SEC, but I see it. There's the regionality-ish, I guess, or at least the fact that this conference makes so much more sense. It makes me think the Big 12 is within earshot, within stone's throw of the Big 10.
I think we're ahead on the field. If
everybody clip it, that's going to make some people mad there, Jeff.
I mean, Big Ten has not been winning playoff games. SEC's been just destroying them. The Big Ten's been loading up on beating their weak, Maryland's and Rutgers and Northwesterns and Illinois and on and on and on. Just a lot of just lower. Just a lot of fodder. And there's some good teams, some good brands. They get the respect. They have great fans. They get ratings out the wazoo because of those big brands. But if you look at, we talked earlier about the lower ceiling maybe the Big 12 has, but the floor is so much higher in the Big 12 than what they have in the Big 10. And yes, they're, I think everyone's just saying it's these two power conferences so much far ahead of everyone else because of the money. And the money is no question. The SEC and the Big 10 are far ahead. And that's a big thing. I'm not trying to minimize that at all. But if, I look at these things called the Massey composite rating. So Ken Massey, who's a big computer ranking guru, he actually has a website that goes through and pulls all the different rating systems, all the different computer rating systems, and averages them for all the FBS teams. And if you look at the average team rating for the Big 12, it's been number 2 pretty much every year for the last 5 years. And one year even was above the SEC. The Big 10 has been number 3 all of those years. And then the ACC and Pac-12 have sort of fought for 4th and 5th place. And that's football. I mean,
wow.
Basketball, I mean, you look at those average ratings, whether it's Ken Pom or the net ratings or the Massey. Massey does the same thing for basketball as well, does the average team ranking. And it's not even close. Not even close. I mean, and you think the ACC is still respected as a big basketball conference because they have Duke, North Carolina, Syracuse. They've got these big brands, massive fan bases. But I mean, if you're looking at what's happening on the field, and you're looking at unbiased computers, you're not listening to journalists who are talking about, you look at who's like really highly ranked right now. The Pac-12 has 5 or 6 teams, and they're from bigger markets. They ended well. Some of those teams definitely deserve that, but I think part of it's just what the Big 12 is going to face, and always maybe has faced, of being in the middle and not being the media darlings. Just being the blue collar brands that just gotta earn the respect on the field each year, and they do earn it on the field. And then the next year it's like the reset button. We've only got 2 Big 12 ranked teams in the preseason, and you start a little bit. It's like you're starting 5 meters behind on a 100-meter race when you do that. But Big 12 sort of takes that and just says, let's go earn it on the field, and keeps doing it.
Jeff, the Big 12 is better at basketball on the men's and women's side. The Big 12 is better. That's objective. You just mentioned the Big 12 has been better the last handful of years in football as well, and that obviously the Big 12 is better in softball and better in baseball. I mean, sure, the Big 10's got
SEC owns baseball.
Big 10 compared from the Big 10 to the Big 12.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Big 12 has the bigger brand in every. So to me, it's almost foolish that we're saying, "Oh, sure, they got the money," but from a conference standpoint, it's the Big 12. Athletically, it is the Big 12 right now. That feels objective. It's tough to argue with that. But Jeff, does that change as Oregon and Washington and USC and UCLA go to the Big 10, or does that weird fit almost give the Big 12 another leg up?
Yeah, I mean, it's, they're adding some schools that do really well in the Directors Cup. That's sort of the all sports, looking at who has the most championships. And, you get just as much credit for winning a water polo national championship as winning a football national championship in that ranking. So, they're adding schools that do really well in that. Big 12 does okay in that, but that's, Big 12 is one of the weaker of the power conferences in that ranking. But you're like you say, that the revenue sports, the sports that people care about, that fans go to, your baseballs, your basketball, men's and women's, your softball. Big 12, I think, is far, far, far ahead of the Big 10, and that matters. I mean, don't really compete with them on hockey. Hockey is the Big Ten's place, and they.
I'll give it to them.
They do have some good hockey events and some good environments there, but that's about all where I say, that's no question. The Big Ten's got the Big 12.
Yeah. Well, Jeff, the Pac-12. A video killed the radio star. What killed the Pac-12? Right here on Locked On Big 12, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. It is your team every day. Jeff, was it money that killed the Pac-12, or was it the Pac-12 that killed the Pac-12?
There's no question it was the Pac-12 that killed the Pac-12. They could have survived. There's ample evidence that they, first and foremost, they could have gotten better leadership than Larry Scott, or got rid of him earlier.
Yes.
it's this hubris, it's this pride. All the other bigger conferences with bigger fan bases, they're partnering with networks to make their conference networks. The Big Ten with Fox, SEC with ESPN, and it's just crazy to see that. They just. I'm sorry,
That's an awesome cameo.
They said, well, we're not going to partner with anyone. I think ESPN wanted to partner with them to make the Pac-12 network. And they said, no, we're going to do it on our own. We're going to keep our own money. We know how to do this. And that, just debacle after debacle with the Pac-12 network. That's the start. Should have gotten rid of Larry Scott. They shouldn't have had their conference, headquarters in ultra expensive, the most expensive downtown in the nation in San Francisco. Yeah. I mean, let's just lay out thing after thing. And just the presidents were asleep at the wheel. I've heard about, if you're going to fail fast. Pac-12 failed slow and just wouldn't, cut it off and get a new leader, wouldn't partner with someone. And that's the long-term story. The short term, they had ESPN, ready to go with them. And they said, well, we think we're worth $50 million. And the ESPN offer was apparently right around $30 million a year. And they just overvalued themselves. They think they are now what they were, 20 years ago. And they're just not. The other conferences have caught up and surpassed them, mostly because people in that part of the country just don't care about college sports as much as they do in the SEC and Big Ten country, and obviously the Big 12 country. So I just think they killed themselves. They couldn't see what their real value was. What's the first thing? Know thyself. An important part of life is know thyself, and they just did not know who they are right now. They know who they were 20 years ago, but not who they are right now.
So you have 4 teams left. I love that you mentioned, this is a pro sport market. A lot of these places over out west, it is more pro sport oriented, and those are some passionate fan bases, but nobody was showing up to these college games. Attendance was terrible. Jeff, now these 4 teams left. Do they exist in a conference? What's going? I mean, these teams don't know where they're going to play in 2024. What happens now?
Yeah, I mean, everyone's waiting for Stanford to do something. Again, I think, people are just baffled. Just these old school academic types are just bewildered that nobody wants Stanford. It's like, have you seen a Stanford football game in the last 5 years? The stands are empty. They actually, over the last 5 years, they are number 15. I think it was 15 or 17th in the nation for total revenue. And I'm just like, how are they doing that?
Which is not bad.
I know, that's really good, but it's their donors, and they have 20 years ago, their academic endowment. So just people who have given money to sit there and to earn money and to fund scholarships and to earn interest. It was $270 million 20 years ago. It's reported to be close to $1 billion right now, just their academic endowment. So they're just making interest. They have a good year in the market, and they don't need to sell a single ticket, and they're going to make money. So. Yeah. It's so that money is not the problem with Stanford, but it's just Dad.
It's a great cameo. Jeff, well, before we get you out of here, then the death of the Pac-12 and obviously the life of the Big 12. Are you disappointed at all?
I'm sorry. Ask that question again.
Death of the Pac-12, the life of the Big 12. Are you disappointed at all?
Yeah, I mean, I'm maybe a little less kind as most. There's a lot of tradition, a lot of great schools but as a BYU fan who just, being the butt of jokes of Pac-12 teams, they wanted to schedule us, wanted our fans, sell our fans to buy their tickets to help fill up their stadiums. They just wouldn't let us in the club. We weren't the right fit. There's a lot of reasons behind that. We won't go into those, but it's partially political. But cultural fit is the thing we say nowadays. Right. But I just view it as a life lesson that they would have, if they would have added teams like BYU, like Baylor, TCU, Oklahoma State when Texas and Oklahoma left, they could have added a handful of schools and they'd be an existing conference now. But they just thought they were too good and didn't need any help, and they were just better than the unwashed masses from the religious people and the rubes from the Midwest, the Hicks, and just didn't want to be associated with those people. So maybe I should be more kind and more Christian on that. But hey, that's just what happens when
did it to yourself. I mean, Sodom and Gomorrah was destroyed, Jeff. And Sodom and Gomorrah was destroyed. Man, thank you so much for joining this show. I would love to have you on a consistent basis because the work that you do, how knowledgeable I can be about realignment and just college athletics on the whole because of the research and work you do is spectacular. Please tell people where to find you.
Yeah. JJ Fuller 72 at Twitter is what I do most of the stuff. I've written a series of articles that's listed at ESPN60.com, ESPN60sports.com. Excuse me. If you just look up Jeff Fuller and Pac-12 media deals, it's a series of 7 articles that was pretty much comparing the Big 12 and the Pac-12 and why the Big 12 got a media deal and why the Pac-12 was struggling. And it's pretty detailed. It's sort of overkill in several areas, but there's a lot of data there. And I just like to throw out data, just metrics, look at fan base sizes, look at revenue, all kinds of stuff. So find me there, and appreciate the opportunity to come on this great show. Love Locked On Big 12.
Absolutely. That's Jeff Fuller. Jeff, thanks again. And for everybody out there, thank you for making Locked On Big 12 your first listen every single day. Come back tomorrow and on Friday and every day after that. We got a lot of great guests lined up as football season starts this weekend here on Locked On. Thanks for making it your first listen every single day. Big 12. And we're out.